Доброго дня, шановні журналісти.
Good afternoon, fellow journalists. Ukraine spent several days at the UN General Assembly. We achieved significant and positive political changes, as well as practical steps that benefit our country. We have fully refocused attention on Ukraine. The main topic is Ukraine. Naturally, Gaza is also a major issue at the Assembly. It's also important that Ukraine remains a central issue for all world leaders. Everyone not only brought up the topic, there was considerable interest in various formats and meetings, at the presidential level, by the head of the President's office, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, advisors, the Minister of Economy. Ukraine held many meetings, and as a result, we have tangible outcomes. We had an excellent meeting with the President of the United States. Our teams have reached a common understanding of the situation on the battlefield and what progress can be made. We have made progress on the economic agreement referred to as the mineral deal. The fund is now operational. We also held an important meeting with top American business representatives, all of whom were very pleased with the launch of this fund and see it as an opportunity to invest in Ukraine. These negotiations will move to the Cabinet of Ministers level, and we have agreed that all practical meetings will be handled in October in America by Ukraine's Prime Minister, Yulia Sviridenko. We also reached an agreement regarding the purchase of weapon systems from the US through various programs. Technical meetings on this, beginning at the end of September and into early October, will take place in the United States, led by the Ukrainian delegation. We discussed the main points and reached agreement with the President. We now move toward concrete implementation. We'll also be working on energy cooperation. The issue is not only protection, but also who can and who will contribute to security in the future. We believe that, in the near future, Ukraine will stand between the US and Europe, on matters ranging from infrastructure to gas storage, and much more. Besides the major weapons agreement, which we've provisionally referred to as the mega deal, we discussed a drone-focused agreement. Our technical teams are now working on it. These are drones that the US will purchase directly from Ukraine. We also discussed our diplomatic strategies for a possible end to the war. Further details can be provided if needed. Simply put, we also held a very important summit on Ukrainian children, with more than 40 delegations represented, including leaders and royalty from 2 countries. We're grateful to everyone for their support of the resolution and statement about our children, which specifically addressed building a registry to facilitate returning children to Ukraine and providing free meals, funded by the European Commission, for Ukrainian children. The next summit will take place in Brussels, co-chaired by myself and Ursula von der Leyen. There's strong, coordinated financial and other support, especially for projects led by Ukraine's First Lady, which focus on children. The Crimean platform was, for the first time, held at such a high level with 62 delegations from every continent. Our goal was to ensure leaders from all over the world were present in support. We achieved the adoption of a strong declaration regarding Crimea. Crimea is Ukraine. This was a show of mobilized international support. I personally think that we've lost precious time. This kind of work should have begun back in 2014. Nevertheless, the Crimean platform was launched in 2021, and today it is stronger than ever, with much broader high-level backing. Ukraine participated in meetings of the UN Security Council 3 times this week. I was present at the level of heads of state and leaders, and on 2 other occasions, Ukraine was represented by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I'd like to thank the Security Council for its high level of involvement, especially Presidents Macron, Biden, Prime Minister Sanchez, Italy's Deputy Prime Minister Tajani, and US Secretary Rubio. Regarding controlled arms exports, why controlled? So that there is no shortage for the Ukrainian military. That is our approach, setting the needs of our armed forces as a priority. Where we're able to produce excess, and where the army no longer needs more, that surplus will be exported. We'll maintain a list of countries, receive revenue, and pour that into the production of vital, in-demand equipment like drones and interceptors, anything we currently lack. This system suits the Army's needs, even if it frustrates some business interests that would like to export more. But the number 1 priority is arming our forces, and that will remain so for the duration of the war. Controlled export will continue till the war is over. Our focus for export and diplomatic missions remains Europe, North America, and the Middle East. At the UN, there's an agreement on developing representation in Africa. We've already received proposals from several African countries, and have chosen one, with more conversations underway. All our export initiatives will proceed in this way. We expect to soon have more specifics and will make them public as appropriate. We re-established diplomatic relations with 3 countries in this period. The latest was Syria. We'll work with these partners on agro-industrial projects, and in the fall, technical delegations will meet. Ukraine has received humanitarian packages from Ireland, Canada, and many other countries. For the Ukrainian public, especially families hardest hit by the war, additional UN support has been crucial. These included cash assistance in areas where nothing works, like along borders and conflict lines. Some aid programs were frozen for a while, but we have now secured agreements to restart all of them. As I've said, the children's issue has been loud and clear. I'd also like to acknowledge the First Lady of the United States for her meeting with Ukraine's First Lady, and for America's commitment to helping return Ukrainian children. That's all for my statement. Thank you. Mr. President, just a clarification regarding your conversation with Mr. Trump. Some media write that the transfer of Tomahawks to Ukraine was also discussed. Were there really such discussions? How close are we to this? And in this context, did you also discuss the possibility of strikes with American weapons on Russian territory? Thank you. Today Ukraine responds to all Russian strikes with its own weapons, specifically with its own long-range capabilities. Ukraine would use other weapons if Ukraine had them, specifically not strikes, but responses. As for what Ukraine wants from the United States of America, all of this exists. We gave the President of the United States of America with details and illustrations what Ukraine wants. And all of this is basically provided for in our big deal for $90 billion. But we are ready to divide it into separate agreements for separate types of weapons, including long-range. I can't say more details. It's a very sensitive issue. I have questions about oil and finance. After your US trip, I saw statements from Mr. Trump regarding possible sanctions on Russian oil. They seem to indicate secondary sanctions may be less likely. What's your impression? Especially after your meeting with Mr. Fico. Did you discuss alternate oil supply routes for Hungary and Slovakia? Has Ukraine offered to help such countries end imports, since oil currently flows via the Druzhba pipeline? And where does the EU's potential €300 billion in financial support for Ukrainian military needs stand? When it comes to that €300 billion, there are various replenishments from different sources. Some of it comes from frozen assets. Other parts are about meeting this year's budgetary needs in euros. Let's go step by step. I understand everything. Let's take it step by step. First, gas and oil. We are interested in maintaining normal relations with all partners in the European Union, as well as with all representatives of the NATO alliance. Slovakia is one such country. We are ready to help them with alternative supplies, but not by providing oil and gas from the Russian Federation. I agreed with Prime Minister Fico. I am not opposed. On the contrary, I support a meeting between our governments. I believe this meeting will take place in October. At that meeting in Slovakia, Ukraine will be able to propose, and will indeed propose, alternative steps regarding energy support. As for Russian oil and gas, we could also hold discussions with the Hungarians. However, from their side, I have seen no concrete steps, only some media signals, and those signals are clearly not supportive of Ukraine. I have not heard anything more. Regarding reconnaissance drones, reconnaissance ones, we have also observed activity. One drone has been recorded, and there is relevant movement. I asked, by the way, for this evidence to be shown to the public, because some people claim we are making things up. I asked our intelligence and the armed forces. I am not sure whether the armed forces have shown the footage yet. No? Yes, they can show it. Everything has been recorded, electronic movement, photographs, various materials. Let them show it. Yes. Therefore, I do not see positive steps from the Hungarian side. I'm not referring to the population, but to the Hungarian leadership, towards engaging with us. Of course, we are always ready for dialogue. And one more very important point. Hungarian reconnaissance is actively studying Ukrainian territory. No, I meant that we have an initiative to appeal to the European side so that they allow financing our budget, military needs at the expense of their money. We raised the issue not concerning military needs. This is a different matter. It also involves weapons. They are financing weapons. Do you mean not equipment, but personnel? Yes. Yes, as we have outlined regarding personnel, and as we have said, the first point of Ukraine's security guarantees is our army. An increase in salaries is part of this plan. Regarding the strengthening of salaries during the ceasefire, and during the period when our partners are present, meaning there are security guarantees for Ukraine, during this period of security guarantees, our army must be financed. Salaries represent a very large amount of money. The Ukrainian budget alone will not be sufficient to cover the salaries of such a large number of armed forces personnel. The issue of securing additional funds to pay our soldiers is being raised, and our European partners already understand this. This is a question not only for them but also for various institutions. It is still too early to talk about the results.
Mr. President, please tell me, in your interview with Axios, you repeated that, obviously, we do not currently have enough resources to liberate all the occupied territories by military means. You mentioned that we are talking about achieving this through diplomatic means in the future. At the same time, you express support for Trump's statement that Ukraine can regain all its lands. How do these two positions align? Are we expecting increased assistance from our European partners, such as more funding to purchase American weapons? Or are we reaching agreements with the United States for more weapons through some other arrangement? How should this be understood?
Well, it is difficult to speak in complete detail about everything here. We spoke with Axios, and it is important that everyone understands that all of our territory, everything, is about achieving a just peace. Probably, no, I am sure that, in the end, this will be the case. Today, when we spoke with him, everyone understood that Ukraine has not lost the war. And everyone understands that, from the point of view of our independence, we believe we are, in fact, winning. The Russian Federation's goals of destroying and annihilating Ukraine have not been achieved. And I am certain they will not be achieved. Secondly, how much strength do we have today? We have enough strength to prevent ourselves from being occupied, to hold the front. We have sufficient strength for that. But you know, when there are delays in deliveries and in financing, certain shortages arise. Not that everything is resolved now. It is still not fully settled when it comes to complete financing, for example, for interceptors. We have already deployed a strong production system for them. Many Ukrainian companies now understand how to produce them. But financing remains insufficient. This means that today there are not enough resources to take the necessary steps. And this is understandable. I believe this is clear to everyone. To us, to you, and to our partners. Therefore, essentially, the United States believes that Russia is currently losing time and losing many people because it will not achieve its goals. And the important decisions reached with the United States are that America will help Ukraine to ensure Russia does not achieve those goals. I think this is where we were and where we are now. To me, this is a very important element. I just do not want to go into some details. Our task is to strengthen Ukraine as much as possible, through political support and through the supply of various types of weapons that we simply do not have yet. This has been the case with every category of weapons and reinforcement since the beginning of the war. We did not have them at first. I know that all of this will come, eventually. It is a matter of time. But we do not want to lose time, because we are losing people, our people, not the enemies. And this is what matters to us. For this, pressure from the United States, from President Trump, is necessary to bring the Russians to the negotiating table. And it is clear that if we move into the diplomatic track, then I believe that all other issues will be resolved exclusively through negotiations. However, the United States is not abandoning the diplomatic track. Some people interpreted the statement "let Ukraine fight back its lands" to mean that the fighting would continue and the diplomatic direction would be somewhat curtailed. I understand that such an impression may exist. How do I see this? I believe that after our meetings with the President of the United States, and by the way, it may happen just as you say, everything is possible. What does not depend on us can unfold in many ways. We can only guarantee what depends on us. But I believe that if, the day after our meeting with the President of the United States, we already have contacts established through our military channels and our diplomatic channels, and they are coordinating meetings and specific dates, then I am not sure this indicates that they are abandoning us. Thank you. To clarify, does Trump's statement about reclaiming territories mean the US will now do more than just sell weapons and encourage European aid? Is America now prepared to offer more direct support? The diplomatic path pursued by the United States is important for us. They understand that the Russians are lying. What the Russians say to the American side at various levels, they then fail to follow through on. It is important that the United States recognizes this. Therefore, if in the diplomatic arena they do not see any positive signals from the Russians today, they are prepared to strengthen their efforts in another direction. If this alternative direction involves enhancing Ukraine's military capabilities, we are grateful for that support. This does not mean that we have chosen this path. We did not choose this war together with you. We chose the path of defense. If the United States can bring Putin to the negotiating table tomorrow and end this war, that is the priority. However, it is very important to consider the alternative. If they cannot, then what happens? And in this discussion of what then, it is crucial that, at that moment, the United States is not looking for alternatives to supporting Ukraine.
Mr. President, in recent days enemy drones have started appearing over various European cities. Please tell me, in your opinion, what does Russia want to achieve this way, and will European countries be able to cope with such danger on their own without Ukraine's help? Thank you.
Передусім, ми вже проводимо консультації з кількома країн. Поки що не буду казати, з якими, хоча деякі...
Well, first of all, we are already holding consultations with several countries. I will not specify which ones yet, although some information has already been made public. We have sent signals to some countries, and we will even dispatch our people to certain nations as a consultative group to advise on how to counter such actions. Representatives from some of these countries will also come to Ukraine to study. We have reached these agreements, though there are no specifics yet regarding which countries are involved. As for what kind of signals these are, well, I am actually surprised that this is happening only now, because I thought it would have happened earlier. I spoke about this previously. The issue is that Putin will not wait for the war in Ukraine to end. He will open another front somewhere else. Nobody knows exactly where, nobody has known, and nobody fully knows even now. But of course, that is what he wants. He is testing Europe's capabilities. He has already tested whether European countries can protect their airspace from modern Russian drones, and so far, that capability does not exist among Europeans. Let me be honest and explain this using an example from Poland. 92 drones flew toward Poland. We shot all of them down. 19 reached their airspace. Yes, we intercepted them over Ukrainian territory. Of course, some might say they were flying toward us, but we can see their direction and, as we say, the choreography of their flight. Therefore, we believe that 92 drones were headed toward Poland. We shot them all down, but 19 managed to reach. For were shot down by the Poles. I am not comparing our forces. We are at war, they are not. There is no comparison. We simply offered advice on what is needed, and the Polish people supported Ukraine. We are ready to share the knowledge we have gained in Ukraine. And what could happen next? Look at Norway and Denmark. There have been signals. I think I heard something from Sweden this morning, though perhaps I am mistaken. I do not fully recall. Yes, and there are also Romania, Poland, and the Baltic states. Putin is testing the capabilities of European countries. Secondly, I am sure that before winter he is sending signals to countries close to Ukraine, to test how their societies will respond and how prepared they are to continue supporting Ukraine. I believe this has a significant impact. We will see later. From my understanding of how this affects society, I believe it will have a strong influence. Public opinion may shift to thinking not that Ukraine is defending them, but rather that they are giving everything to Ukraine while being unable to protect themselves. This perception could reduce support for Ukraine, especially before winter, and at a time when some of these countries are prepared to transfer air defense systems to us, they may decide to keep them for their own defense. But it does not work that way. I discussed this with some of our leaders. It is not because I am afraid they will stop supplying us or reduce their support. No, that is not the point. It is simply that this approach does not work. You cannot shoot down drones with Patriot systems alone, because there simply are not enough missiles. We know how many exist in the world and how many are produced each month. So, this method will not be sufficient. Other methods are needed. For example, European partners have consistently provided us with two main things. First, air defense systems, which they have been manufacturing for decades and which we simply do not possess, including the missiles for those systems. Second, they have financed the production of our weapons and our drones. These are the two main contributions our partners have made in general terms. Therefore, these systems cannot provide complete protection. They can defend infrastructure against missile strikes, but no system can defend against swarms of 100, 200, or 300 drones. A system might work once, but the next day there simply will not be enough missiles left. This is why knowledge is so crucial, the knowledge of our mobile fire groups, our drone operators, our Air Force leadership, and all our air defense commanders. This expertise is vital. These defense systems are important, as are various drone lines and defensive measures. All of these elements are very important. And we are ready, yes, ready to help. This is what Putin is demonstrating. He is testing how NATO will react. These are, in all likelihood, the main reasons behind his actions.
I'll begin not with Moldova, but with Donald Trump. You mentioned that during your conversation you want to hear what the United States is prepared to offer in terms of future security guarantees, including backstop measures and air support. Did you receive any specific details about what they are ready to provide? Do they agree with the plan that you approved in Paris together with the coalition leaders? And at this moment, what we need first and foremost are Patriot systems, because there was information in the media that the United States is currently not selling Patriots. At the same time, negotiations with Donald Trump are taking place regarding the acquisition of 10 Patriot systems, both for immediate use and for the future. Have there been any successes on this front? Additionally, Germany was supposed to transfer 2 more Patriot systems to us, and the Israeli complex was also expected to arrive. Are these systems already on their way, or have they arrived? This is an important question ahead of winter. I understand that you may not be able to reveal all the details here, correct?
I will not provide all the specific details. All right. The Israeli system has been operational in Ukraine for a month now. How has it been working for a month? We will receive 2 Patriot systems in the autumn. Let's leave it at that. I will not say anything more about the Patriots. Next question.
And guarantees. Did you get understanding of what the states are ready for? Did they agree with that plan, or has this question possibly moved aside somewhat?
Well, look, we really did have a meeting. It lasted about an hour, and we didn't manage to discuss everything. Why? Because we spent a lot of time talking about weapons. Yes, weapons and diplomatic tracks. There were many questions. We discussed 4 or 5 important agreements. We have a shared understanding of how security guarantees should function and the need for a bilateral agreement with the United States. We want a bilateral agreement that will be legally binding, one that will be adopted by the US Congress and, accordingly, by our Parliament. This is what we need. Furthermore, we discussed the weapons agreement I mentioned earlier. We also discussed the agreement related to drones. We talked about how the mineral deal would work. And we began discussions on a free trade agreement. This is a very complex matter. Yes, but every path must begin somewhere if you want to follow it through. Now, regarding Moldova, as you mentioned, tomorrow there are elections. I believe Europe is at risk. We cannot treat this as merely an internal issue of Moldova, because Moldova is a future member of the European Union. Its territory borders European countries. Russia strongly desires to influence Moldova. How does it exert influence? It all begins with politics. You know, if they have their parties in parliament, and we have experienced this with you, the next step is to form their own government, and naturally, to have their own president. After that, military presence follows. This is essentially how Russia operates. Therefore, I believe that today the pro-European, and of course, primarily pro-Moldovan, President Maya Sandu, who is pro-European, friendly towards Ukraine, and respectful of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, is very important for us. We share common borders, and this matters greatly to us. I consider this important not only for Ukraine but also for Europe and for Moldova itself. If there are changes in the Moldovan parliament, further changes could follow. This is what I am talking about, the risks. These are risks for everyone. Take Transnistria, for example, and the people who currently hold power there. Nobody considers Transnistria a country. It is occupied territory of Moldova. The people who are in control there are currently quiet because they fear us. Of course, they fear only us. At the beginning of the war, they received clear signals from us. There were a couple of shots directed toward that territory, a firm warning from me personally. As a result, they remain quiet because, on the other side, there is Moldova today, led by a pro-European president. If politics in Moldova shifts from pro-European to pro-Russian, then those who are currently quiet may become vocal and active, because there are several thousand Russian soldiers stationed there. Whether we like it or not, this is a fact. Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask whether you consider it to be your achievement that Trump's attitude changed. Perhaps you accomplished this during your meeting with him. And did he mention a special operation? Did you talk to him about a special operation you intend to carry out? What special operation are we talking about? Did you speak about specific operations you would like to conduct, or was it a more general discussion? Did you provide him with certain details about what you want to achieve and what specific actions you plan to take? Details that may have changed his perception of Ukraine's capabilities? Because his tone of voice changed quite remarkably.
Деяким баченням. І це правда. Реаліями на полі бою і
Indeed, I shared with him a certain vision. This is true, the realities on the battlefield and my perspective on what could happen. I believe this has an impact on Russia. We should not expect any soft or conciliatory moves from Russia toward Ukraine. Accordingly, Ukraine should take appropriate steps in response to Russia. We should not be afraid of this. And we should not be overly cautious in our rhetoric toward the Russians when they issue threats. I believe that civilized countries should respond with the same firmness. You cannot act civilized toward those who behave uncivilized. In my view, this is a mistake, both in rhetoric and in more substantive actions on the battlefield and regarding the goals of the Russian Federation. If Russia sets out to achieve a specific goal, for example, launching a blackout in Ukraine, something they aim to do every winter, I do not believe that our response, or the response of our partners, should be any different. Russia must clearly understand that civilized countries differ from uncivilized ones in that they never strike first and are not aggressors. But this does not mean they are weak, and weakness must not be displayed. If Russia threatens to create a blackout in Ukraine's capital, then the Kremlin must know that there will be a blackout in Russia's capital as well. This, in short, is what we discussed with the president. There are also many details about the situation on our battlefield. There are numerous programs, including those used by US intelligence and by our military. For example, the Delta program. Let me give you an example. The Delta program records where the enemy has entered. It does not indicate that a sabotage reconnaissance group has entered, or that certain troops entered and were later eliminated. It simply marks the point where they entered. Immediately, this gives the impression that the area is occupied. But this is not occupation. This is simply the nature of the war. If 3 to 5 people entered, they are usually eliminated by the evening. However, by that evening in the United States, President Trump is already being shown reports stating that another village in Ukraine has been occupied. This is how the situation is often interpreted. I just want to explain how this happens. And by the way, this is not unique to him. It happens with other European leaders, and even within our own society. They see areas marked in a certain color on the map, indicating enemy presence. But enemy presence does not mean occupation. Those forces will be destroyed, and our troops will retake their positions. It is important to understand that these temporary enemy presences are not actual advantages, despite how Russia tries to present them to its population and abroad. These are not victories. They are temporary footholds, and their time will end as soon as the Ukrainian armed forces take the appropriate actions. These kinds of nuances, and this is just one example involving the Delta program, exist in many forms and across different types of data. There are countless such nuances. To explain them properly requires not just a few minutes or even a few hours, but several meetings. I conduct such meetings with world leaders, including the President of the United States. And today, I believe that one of the reasons for the change in rhetoric is a growing distrust of Putin, combined with a deeper understanding of the battlefield's complexities. There is increased faith in Ukraine and recognition of the disrespect that Russia shows toward everyone, including the President of the United States. I believe these are the main reasons.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I am from NHK, the Japanese broadcasting company. President Trump noted on social media that he met with you and stated that Ukraine can regain all of its territories that have been occupied since the beginning of the war with the support being provided. However, it is still not easy to achieve this, particularly when it comes to reducing, for example, energy dependence on Russia, as has been mentioned. So, what are your demands from the European countries? How do you believe they can ensure and provide the kind of support that President Trump referred to when he spoke about Europe?
Дякую за запитання. У Росії є проблеми з економікою на сьогодні.
Thank you for the question. Russia is currently facing economic problems. These problems do exist, but Russia does not openly admit them because it still has a large amount of cash. Everyone understands this. They have significant financial reserves in various forms. The largest source of revenue for Russia's budget is energy, specifically, the sale of energy resources, primarily gas and oil. Europe, in one way or another, whether through individual states or indirectly via other countries, continues to receive energy resources from the Russian Federation. Through these exports, Russia receives revenue, which it spends exclusively on the war. Why exclusively on the war? Because we do not see any increase in social spending or social support within Russia. This means that all of this money is being directed toward financing the war. If there is a shortage of this war funding, social spending in Russia will be reduced. And if social support for the population decreases, public dissatisfaction will grow. This, in turn, will lead to dissatisfaction within the Russian leadership, because historically, Russia has often experienced leadership changes through what we call hungry riots. I will not say in which direction this could lead, but historically, different leadership has emerged from such situations. Naturally, the Russian authorities fear this scenario. Europe today must stop all forms of energy supply from Russia. Yes, there are risks. We understand that logistics will change and it may become more expensive, but a solution must be found to completely stop the purchase of energy resources, whether directly or indirectly, from Russia. In this regard, I support the position of the United States of America. Of course, we are interested in this. I believe Europe must take this seriously. Look at the drone attacks, at the threats and intimidation coming from Russia. Europe must also understand these signals. It would be strange if they continued to import energy resources from the Russian Federation despite such clear warnings. For example, drones have reached our Nordic partners. The question arises, from where? Anyone can look at a map and see where these drones could have come from if they are Russian. One possible explanation is that they are using the Russian Federation's shadow fleet, which relies on the waterways of our European friends and partners. Therefore, this must be addressed comprehensively, not only through energy sanctions but also by tackling the shadow fleet and ultimately stopping Russia's ability to trade and export goods by sea. This is another key way to weaken the Russian economy. Yes, we are in discussions with the Slovaks and the Hungarians, but it is not only about them. The Slovaks and Hungarians have direct or previously existing contracts with Russia. However, there are other countries involved as well. Some receive energy resources directly, others receive processed energy resources, and some profit from providing logistic services for transporting Russian energy to other countries. We have discussed sanctions many times. If we are going to talk about energy sanctions on Russia, then we should talk about them without exceptions, without special conditions, completely comprehensive and total sanctions. In addition to energy, the banking sector and the shadow fleet must also be addressed. There is a list of about 500 ships and vessels linked to this activity. Yes, there are sanctions, both legal and physical, targeting these ships, their crews, their captains, and so on. This approach can bring real results. This way, Russia will face a significant financial deficit. They have already planned a 50 billion reduction in their defense budget for 2026. Of course, they will try to find that money elsewhere. They still have large financial reserves. But if these flows are truly cut off, it will become much harder for them.